Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind. Remember, if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and follow us on your podcast provider. Our aim, as ever, is to add value to your leadership journey, and we're going to bring you some amazing guests with amazing stories and experts in their field. So today we are speaking to Paul. How are you doing, Paul? Are you okay?
Oh, Stuart, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you so much for joining me. You've only recently come across my radar, if you like, and we've got a similar ex-military background. You've got an amazing story to tell, very much linked to leadership as well. So I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to get you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So as I hit the 20-minute timer, Paul, tell us, for the people who don't know who you are, let us know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, certainly. So I'll put it in a nutshell as much as I can. So I am Paul Boggie. I'm from Edinburgh. Second eldest, my mum had 4 boys. A good upbringing, strict parents. I had a few run-ins. You know, I was in a gang very early on, which was just like school friends, running amok, smashing windows and getting chases from the police and stuff. And at the age of 18, I was unfortunate enough to come across heroin, and I suppose that's where my life story really begins. I became addicted to heroin, and very quickly my whole life was over in my own mind when I realised that I'd become this heroin addict, and I knew that heroin kills. I'd seen it in my lifetime, so I was very self-destructive. My addiction lasted for 7 years. I had run-ins with not just heroin. I ended up on a methadone program. I ended up on antidepressants, diazepam, otherwise known as Valium, a lot of cannabis, really just a cocktail of lots of drugs all at the same time. It is a miracle I'm still here. Because of the stress that I put on my body whilst I was in that state. I was a zombie, Stuart.
Yeah,
that's the truth.
Yeah.
I'd just become this complete zombie. I had withdrawn completely from society, and when I looked in the mirror, I could see the person looking back at me and how these drugs had started to really take its toll and deteriorate. And in my mind, I'm preparing to die for a long time. I'm not sure when it's going to happen. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to happen. But on a daily basis, I am just constantly thinking, you know, it is only a matter of time. And it was just a very negative way to think on a daily basis. I didn't think very highly of myself. My self-talk was really abysmal, really. And no wonder.
I was thinking then that you just explaining what you just said then, it just shouts out of control. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you've
got, and it's no wonder I ended up depressed almost to the point of committing suicide. When I look back now, it's, you know, obviously reflection is a great thing. You look back and you start to piece together the reasons why you are the way you are. And when I look back, I think to myself, no wonder I was so heavily depressed with the way that I was thinking on a daily basis. It was inevitable that I was going to end up contemplating suicide, you know, and that's sort of why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is to try and help these people that are in that situation that I was then right now, to try and help them to understand that there are things that we can do ourselves to make the changes that need to be made to have a better and happier life. So that's really what I do now. That's Paul Boggie in a nutshell. Obviously, I could talk for hours, of course, but
you know what? There's a question I'm going to ask you near the end. I just came, but we're in danger of just carrying on and not doing the questions that we always ask people. So, but just from that, a great introduction, you can tell I've had some people on here that really go into that self-leadership. We talked before we jumped on about that self-talk and taking control then of your journey. And we talk about leadership journey all the time. So there's so many similarities. So it's great to have you on again. So we're #leadership, what's on your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear the word leadership?
Internal.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
That I've spent so much of my life looking for leadership out with, you know, parents, government, school, drug counsellors, brothers, aunties and uncles, and I've looked for leadership from within these people. And I failed. 13 times I relapsed with the heroin. So when I hear the word leadership now, my leadership right now came from within there.
Yeah.
That's where
Wow.
all my leadership comes from, and it's still to this day. It comes from within that. So it's all internal. It's all the answers that I was seeking were coming from within me. I didn't realize that back then. I do now, you know. But all these answers for everything, it was from me. I had to take leadership in my own life.
Yeah, brilliant.
100%.
I love that. That's so powerful. So then that leads me to saying, and you've alluded a couple of times to quite a few things that could be this, but we ask people, like, where do you think your leadership journey started? Whether it is on reflection or there was a light bulb moment at the time. I know you've had several probably, but where would you go back to? How far would you go back for the start of your leadership journey?
I would say that it all happened. So that night I was supposed to commit suicide and had everything planned. And I woke up that following morning on the rug, surrounded by all my tablets. And I realized at that moment in time that my life had to change. And that's where my leadership began, from that moment, where it was something that I had to pursue full-heartedly, you know, and stop looking for guidance from people, anyone outside my own head. My leadership had to come from within there. And when I realized that, I did go and seek the help. I got the help. I turned my life around, you know. I went on to be a soldier in the Scots Guards. I'm now a proud author. I'm now visiting prisons and schools, and you know, I've got lots of amazing things now, and that is only possible through my leadership.
Yeah, amazing.
Myself, you know.
Yeah, but and then this is brilliant, because then this really fascinates me now with my third question even, which we've only just started asking, because it was from a listener who was like, it'd be really interesting, because we allude to it quite a lot and some people do mention it, but if you were to pick out somebody that has had a real influence on your leadership journey, obviously you've had to look within, but has there been anybody, whether you name them or not, that's had a real impact on your leadership journey, whether positive or negative?
I would say positive wise, I would say there was a drug counsellor that I met back in the day, and my mindset was that heroin kills and my life's over. And I met this guy who was a drug counsellor who was, I think he was 8 years clean off heroin, and he was now a drug counsellor helping me. And he had a really positive influence on my life, because I remember the very first question that I asked him, how the hell are you still alive? And he just laughed. He says, go and grab a cup of tea and we'll have a chat. And it was fascinating for me. There was this guy with a shirt and tie on, sitting at the other end, talking to me about things that he understood. So that was a very positive person that really helped it. You touched on it there, positive and negative. I've had a lot of negativity. I will continue to get a lot of negativity about who I am. You know, an ex-heroin addict, a veteran. I get a lot of hate on social media, especially, you know, and what I do is I choose to flip that negativity into a positive to inspire me to keep on this journey that I'm on and to never give up. So as much as it's great to have the positivity from people in my life, and I've got more positivity than negative, you know, you hold on to that for dear life. And then when these pockets of sort of nasty people come out and say horrible things about, oh, you're a smackhead, imagine a smackhead going on and guarding the Queen at Buckingham Palace and stuff. Then I realise, you know, that's an opinion of probably more people than I've actually said it. But I use that sort of negative information that's coming into my mind and flip it and just say, you know, take any of the positives out of that I can. It's going to get, as my name is wider known, there'll be even more negativity coming in. And I think by knowing about my mind and the way that it works as much as I do now, it's such a relief for me now to not be fazed by negativity. So there's not any one individual Stuart, there's a whole host of people that I've probably never met, and some I probably have met. But
well, do you know what? It's the opposite of what I picked up on your introduction when I said that lack of control. Like, now you've got control, isn't it? It's a complete opposite, and that's a real positive thing to have moving forwards. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey into the army? We don't need to have the RAF army banter, but how was that? Like, how inspiring is that you managed to get to that level? You talked about the fitness and the turnaround, but what was it like going into the army? Because yes, obviously there is a leadership and a complete opposite to what you've come from. So what was that like going into that army? Was it a relief that you were in that structure and purpose and drive, or was there any struggle at the time? Was it a relief, or was it something you were needing to do?
It was hard work physically. Basic training for 7 months to be a guardsman. It's hard for any human being that ever goes on to do that. So I'm not sure if it was initially we spoke about this, but when I broke away from heroin almost 18 years ago, I had to fill this void that I had in my life, this crutch that I was using. Heroin was my best friend. I had to fill that void, and I chose fitness. So I'm running, I'm boxing, I'm lifting weights, and then, you know, I turned my whole life around. At the age of 30, I go for my medical. I'm extremely fit. They signed a bit of paper and they say enjoy basic training. Jump on a train, waving goodbye to my mum and dad at the train station, on a train down to Catterick, Darlington and then Catterick. You know, what I didn't know is that word had already spread down there about who I was. What they said was, this smackhead from the East Coast. That's what the sergeant said on day one. I'm only off the coach for 20 minutes. And then, you know, there was a lot of banter around it. Everybody found it fascinating. The officers, the NCOs, the trainee guardsmen, everybody was just fascinated. And they joked because I was old. I'm older than everybody. Older than all the NCOs, older than all the officers. You know, here's this old guy. You know, but we'd done the 1.5 miles, and I think it was on the second day. And I came in third out of 50 men. So that really stood me in good stead for my basic training. Right, he's had his problems with drugs, but he's clearly on a different path now and he's extremely fit. So I've got a little bit more respect from them. The whole physical thing, you're trying to be a guardsman, the drill involved, the rifles, and, you know, the exercises and stuff, it was difficult physically, but mentally I'm in a different place by the time of 30 years old. I have already lived this life of turmoil and self-doubt and depression and all these things, and I had worked it all out. So I always remember speaking to a sergeant in the barracks in the first couple of weeks, and he came in to speak to me. And he says, do you know what we're trying to do here? He says, we're trying to break you down mentally. And we want to build you up to be the best guardsman that you can be. And I laughed, Stuart, right? And he says,
I've already done that to the extreme.
yeah, he says, Boggie, what are you laughing at? And I said, sorry, Sergeant. He says, enlighten us. I says, well, just what you're saying there about, you know, that you're going to try and break people down. I says, I understand that, you know, the 18-year-olds and that some of the guys that are in the room, says they're young lads, you're going to break them down and build them up. I says, I think you're going to have a hard time mentally breaking me down. And he laughed and he says, we'll see, Boggie. We'll see. Wait till we get to bayonet training. We'll see. You know, and it was like, that it was true that I'd already mentally prepared for this basic training of 7 months. I did find it difficult at times. Of course I did, because you wouldn't be normal if you didn't. But I did find it difficult, but mentally I was prepared and I was determined or stubborn.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? I love the basic training because I didn't know that at the time, but it's very clever, isn't it? We haven't got time to go into it too much, but I was going in to do my dream job, and it still made me question what I was doing. And it's very individual and group led, isn't it? That's why they've not changed it that much over a long period of time, but everybody should question what they're doing and why they're doing it. And you get out the end and it's worth it. So I want to tell us about the book. I want to promote it, show it. If you're looking on the YouTube, you can see it right there. Tell us about the book. What's it all about? How can we get hold of it? We're going to put the links in the comments here if people go and have a look at it and get it and read it. And obviously you'll get the full story, not just 20 minutes on the podcast. So tell us about it.
Yeah, so the book came around, I was in basic training, we were out on an exercise, sitting in a wooded area, the middle of the night, and I'm sitting minding my own business, having my scoff. One of the sergeants shouts, come on in, Boggie, tell us all the stories about being on the drugs. So I went over and everybody, all the officers and trainee guardsmen, all came round the fire that the NCOs were sitting at, and I told them about my life. And afterwards, a lot of them approached me, some of the officers as well, and said, trainee guardsman Boggie, you should write a book. And that started that process. Through my rehabilitation, from a very early stage, a drug counsellor said, write down how you feel, to offload it from your mind, to see if that helps you. So I'd done that. So I'd already started to accrue a lot of paperwork that was never meant for anybody was ever meant to read it. It was only for me. You know, but here I am in the middle of this wooded area, sharing it, and I thought, you know, I'm going to go to Afghanistan. When I return from Afghanistan, Heroin To Hero. And when I sort of thought about it, I thought, I like that. So that was where the whole title of the book had came from, Heroin To Hero. Then I was in a serious car accident. I broke my back and I crushed my spine. And it was through no fault of my own, but I'm left being medically discharged in 2015, 2 months prior to my first tour to Afghan. And so I never made it. So I was physically broken and I was mentally broken as a result. You know, then at lockdown, beginning of lockdown, my wife came in and said, we're going to be locked up for 2 weeks. So I thought, right, you know, what am I going to do?
Perfect.
So I says, right, I'm going to get the folder out with all the paperwork. So I sat and wrote the book. And that's really where my life did change. I was able to stop taking all my prescription medications for my crushed spine. I was able to, I had another light bulb moment. You talk about leadership. I realised that I had lost my own leadership for those years from being medically discharged up until a couple of years ago. There'd been a 4 or 5 year period where I had taken no leadership in my life. I'd listened to doctors and spinal specialists that told me I'm going to be on drugs. So I took back leadership in my own life that night. And I said, you know what? I'm stopping the drugs. No listening to anybody else. I will stop the drugs, or I'll try my hardest. I was able to do it. I'm 19 months drug free now. I will publish this book. I will donate every single penny to homelessness in Scotland. I've raised over £11,000 so far. I will donate every single penny. I will be open, public, brutally honest where it's needed about my life in order to help other people that are suffering with addiction problems and mental health problems like what I was. I'm not going to hide away anymore. I'm going to, you know, do it. That allowed me to keep the title in my book.
Yeah.
Because if you see on the front, picturing me in my Scots Guards uniform. Now, you can imagine, you all understand this, obviously being a veteran yourself, in the veteran community, when people see that and they see the word hero, their self-talk, their judgment, initial snap judgment, oh, hero, he must have went to Afghan, he must have done this, and he must have done that, and he must have, and then they realise, wait a minute, the guy never even went on tour, so why is he calling himself a hero? So that's, I don't want to spoil it for anybody that's going to get the book.
No, I think it's like the hero title, again, it gets bounded around, doesn't it? But I think from my perspective, listening to your story, like you're the hero in your own story. Like that's powerful enough, isn't it? It doesn't matter what other people's opinions, and like you said, that all our experiences of social media at the minute, it's out there, isn't it? And you're sort of heightened that because of the book and stuff. But amazing. That's our 20 minutes. I just want to ask you a quick question, because I want a quick thought process on this, because I wrote this down when we first started, because you mentioned about what you do now, like you're really helping of others, giving of your time and your experience, and just to help others. If you'd have met you when you were back at 18 years old and in the realms of spiraling and not in control, what would have helped you to listen to you now? Like, would you have listened to you now?
100%.
Okay.
And I'll explain briefly why, because I know time is going to get away from us. You know, I've got this self-belief now. It's obviously clear for anybody watching this podcast to see. I do have this belief in myself, and I don't care what the rest of the world think. Fortunately, lots of people support me. If I am going back to that stage at 18, you know, I'm going to take the information that I need from people that have lived it. That's the importance of lived experience. And I'm speaking to the drug minister of Scotland. I've spoke to her. I'm going to be doing a lot more things as well. That's where it is for these 18-year-olds that are like me back then. You know, they want to hear from lived experiences, rather than, no disrespect to anybody, Stuart, okay, that, you know, if people have read it from a book about addiction, there is no substitute for actually suffering from addiction problems other than somebody that's lucky enough to still be alive, to be able to talk to 18-year-olds, 17, 16-year-olds about the dangers of it and say, well, look, I'm maybe sitting in front of you right now. I'm incredibly lucky to be alive. And this is why. You know, I was on all these drugs. I was heavily depressed, almost took my own life. My life was horrific. And I can openly and honestly talk to you about it for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, as long as it's needed to get through into your head that the decisions that you're about to potentially make are the wrong ones.
Yeah.
And where you need to make the changes, it's not your parents, it's not your brothers. The changes that need to be made come from within your mind. Learn about your mind and change your life. And that's what I would say. That's what I do say to people.
Amazing. What a great,
you know,
and again, that links into the corporate leadership world, when people are trying to make their own path in leadership, have their own impact. It's such a powerful story. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing it. Guys, the link to go and get the book and contribute to that is in the comments below. Make sure you go and link up with Paul. He's doing some amazing stuff on social media, always sharing some of the things you're doing. So ladies and gents, a bit longer than normal, but I like the fact that it was done for a very good reason. So if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. Every Wednesday at 6 a.m. we've got an amazing guest dropping, experts in their field and people with phenomenal stories. And if you're listening to us on your podcast provider, make sure you hit follow. And we'd always love to hear your takeaways from each and every one of the episodes. So, Paul, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And guys, I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.